See, the narcissist always thought they were the main character. Every manipulation, every guilt trip, every carefully timed emotional landmine, it was all theatre. And you were cast as their supporting actor, the healer, the fixer, the one who understands them, even when they don't deserve understanding. But here's the twist they never saw coming. You weren't the side character, you were the scriptwriter, and you've just flipped the genre. Because healing doesn't just hurt the narcissist, it erases them. You see, the narcissist exists in a house of mirrors. No walls, no foundation, just reflections of who they pretend to be, bouncing here, there, and everywhere off anyone foolish enough to stand too close. But the moment you stop reacting, those mirrors crack, and behind the glass, nothing. Nothing. No self, no substance, nothing. Just hunger wearing a human mask. But now the empath has evolved, not into a version hardened by bitterness, but into someone refined by fire and sharpened by truth. They no longer explain themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding what they're saying. They no longer waste compassion on those who see empathy as an entry point to exploit. They stop answering the door to chaos. They stop attending pity parties where they are ultimately always the ones cleaning up after everyone else. And that's when the narcissist starts to panic. They send in their flying monkeys. They post cryptic social media nonsense about toxic people and loyalty. They wear their victim badge like it's a clown. Look what you did to me, you evil person, they cry. But the super empath doesn't bite back. They've traded the urge to defend themselves for the peace of being misunderstood by the wrong people. Because now they see the game for what it really is. The narcissist was never interested in connection, only control, only winning and winning, even if it meant destroying the relationship just to say, in amongst all the rubble, I told you so. I told you it would fall apart. But the super empath thought they built something. They built something else. A life. A calm, grounded, joyfully uneventful life. With boundaries like steel and self-worth, like sunlight. And they create space where drama doesn't live, ultimately. Where the peace isn't the absence of noise, but the presence of alignment. And when the narcissist cycles back, and they do, because they always do, they find a door that is no longer open. Not because it's locked, but because the house has been moved. The empath has changed addresses, forwarded no mail, left no forwarding note. They didn't slam the door. They renovated the entire identity that once tolerated. Mistreatment, this new version of the empath, it's unstoppable. They don't flinch when they're being insulted. They don't chase when they're being ghosted. They don't shrink to avoid conflict because they've learned if your peace threatens someone, they were never safe to begin with. And that is what burns the narcissist the most. It's the realization that the one who once fought for them, no longer thinks of them at all. Not with hate, not with heartbreak, just nothing. They've become a name in an old chapter, a lesson, not a longing. So let them scream into the void. Let them compose opera ballads of victimhood and rewritten history. You've got better things to do, like breathe and stretch and laugh with people. Laugh with people who don't weaponize your joy, because this isn't about them anymore. This is about the after, about the garden that blooms when the storm has passed. The empath has risen not from war, but from wisdom. Now they walk through life, not trying to be loved by the broken, but loved right by themselves first, and then because the final form of power is quiet, it's unapologetic, and it's healed and completely unavailable to those who fed on it, on the wounds in the first place. The narcissist didn't lose because you fought harder. They lost because you stopped bleeding. You thought this was a story of survival. It isn't. This is a rebirth. And the empath, they didn't just recover. They've become something rarer than vengeance, untouchable. Because once you've walked through a narcissist's illusions, you develop an allergy to bullshit. The super empath is no longer interested in dancing with red flags in the name of potential. They don't mistake intensity for intimacy. And they don't confuse an apology with accountability. And love bombing, well, That's just an amateur. That's now just an amateur theatre. They don't ask why would someone treat me like this. They ask, why did I tolerate it? And then they fix that. They don't wait for closure from a liar. They close the door themselves, paint over the nameplate and plant sunflowers on the aisles. When the narcissist walks in, the empath doesn't engage. They observe. They notice the subtle power grabs, the performance of humility, the aggressive pity of disguised as the aggressive pity disguised as trauma. The narcissist game is no longer seductive. It's transparent, obvious, predictable, boring. Because here's the thing. Once an empath has rebuilt their nervous system, once they've spent enough mornings stretching in peace instead of spiraling in anxiety, once they've detoxed from the addiction to emotional rescue, once they've done all this, they see manipulation is beneath them. Not because they're arrogant, but because they're free. And you don't argue with clowns once you've left the circus. You don't explain your value to someone who only sees what they can extract. Now, the super empath loves without leaking. They feel deeply, but don't drown. They give generously, but only where it's reciprocated. They test energy, not words, because anyone can say I love you, but not everyone can be in love. And when someone tries to test them, to poke their peace with petty games and power play, they don't defend, they dismiss. Not with rage, not with bitterness, but with calm, beautiful detachment. Because they've learned love without boundaries isn't compassion, it's self-abandonment, and self never abandon themselves again.